There's a painting that most people can't look at for more than 3 seconds. The skull is flayed. The jaw hangs open. Wet tissue drips from what might be a mouth. And in the center of the composition, holding the entire structure together, is a single safety pin. This isn't a crime scene photograph. It's a 1973 acrylic painting by an Austrian mystic named Otto Rapp. And every detail you're seeing was planned. Your brain sorts images in milliseconds, real or fake, safe or dangerous, alive or dead. This painting breaks that system. The rendering is photographic. There are no shadows to soften the decay, no abstraction to provide distance. The lighting is even and bright, like an operating theater. If this were a photograph, your brain would file it under corpse and trigger an immediate contagion response. Do not touch. Do not approach. Disease is present. But the composition is impossible. A human skull doesn't sit inside a rusted birdcage. Flesh doesn't drip in perfectly controlled rivulets. And no autopsy would include a household safety pin as a structural fastener. The image gets stuck, too detailed to dismiss as art, too surreal to accept as reality. This cognitive glitch is what the research packet calls the uncanny valley of death. Your threat assessment system loops endlessly, searching for a category that doesn't exist. The discomfort you feel isn't emotional preference, it's neurological failure. Otto Rapp painted this deliberately. He was trained in the Vienna School of Fantastic Realism, a post-war Austrian movement that combined old master glazing techniques with surrealist subject matter. Artists like Ernst Fuchs and Rudolf Hausner taught him to render nightmares with the precision of medical illustration. The goal wasn't to suggest horror, it was to document it. In 1973, working in isolation in Lethbridge, Alberta, far from the European art capitals that shaped him, Rapp created what he later called part of his Scare Thy Neighbors period, a personal exorcism of something darker. The result refuses to let you look away, because the longer you watch, the more details emerge. Look at the jawline. The skin is peeled back, exposing bone and tissue underneath, and holding it together, barely, is a safety pin. The pin is large, roughly an inch long, and positioned at the hinge of the jaw, where the mandible meets the skull. It's not a delicate medical instrument. It's the kind of heavy-duty fastener you'd use on a cloth diaper or a thick winter coat. The metal is silver, still catching light, still retaining its manufactured sheen. It hasn't corroded. It hasn't bent under the weight of what it's holding. It looks absurdly pristine against the surrounding decay. The clasp is closed. You can see where the pin's point has punctured through one layer of flayed skin, traveled through a gap of exposed muscle and connective tissue, and emerged through another flap on the opposite side. The flesh dimples inward where the metal pierces it, small puckers of tissue compressed by the foreign object. The pin doesn't align with any anatomical structure. It's not following a surgical line or reinforcing bone. It's just stuck through, a desperate improvisation. What makes the detail unbearable is the contrast. The pin is geometric, clean, and industrially perfect. The tissue around it is chaos, ragged edges where skin has torn, fibrous strands of muscle hanging loose, the yellow-white of exposed bone visible in the gaps. Rapp painted both with identical precision. You can see the spiral threading where the pin's clasp locks. You can see individual fibers in the tissue. The juxtaposition forces your brain to accept both as equally real. This is the painting's central argument made visible. The safety pin is domestic, temporary, pathetically inadequate for the structural collapse it's trying to contain. It suggests a last-ditch attempt to keep it together, the kind of makeshift repair you perform when you don't have the right tools, when you know it won't hold, but you try anyway. In the context of the painting's title, Deterioration of Mind over Matter, the pin becomes a metaphor for sanity itself. The self is not a solid, permanent structure. It's a fragile assembly held in place by mechanisms that can fail at any moment. And when they fail, there's no professional intervention. Just you, alone, trying to fasten yourself back together with whatever's at hand. The pin is still closed, still holding, but the flesh is continuing to separate. The gap is widening, and eventually, the tension will be too much. the clasp will spring open, and everything it's holding will fall apart. Once you see the pin, you can't unsee it. Every other detail in the painting begins to organize around it. The skull doesn't float in space. It sits inside a bird cage. The cage is medieval in style. Dark, rusted metal bars forming a dome around the head. The rust isn't decorative. It's structural degradation. The cage itself is decaying along with its contents. In medieval Christian art, bird cages symbolize the soul trapped in the material world, the spirit imprisoned by flesh, waiting for death to provide release. It was a melancholy image, but one that promised eventual transcendence. Rapp corrupts that promise. Here, the cage doesn't just trap the soul, it displays it. The composition positions the viewer as an audience observing a specimen, something exhibited for study or judgment. And there's no suggestion of release. Both the cage and the thing inside are rotting together. Matter doesn't free the mind. It drags it down into shared dissolution. The bars create a second layer of imprisonment. The brain is already caged inside the skull. Now the skull is caged inside metal. The painting presents consciousness as something trapped within nested prisons, each one failing simultaneously. The rust, spreading across the bars in uneven patches, suggests this containment has been in place for a long time. Long enough for the metal to weaken, long enough for whatever was inside to begin liquefying. This isn't a moment of death. It's a documentation of prolonged decay. At the base of the cage, beneath the skull, there's a mass of red, wet, organic material. It's indistinct. Your brain tries to parse it. Muscle tissue, internal organs, pooled blood. But the shapes don't resolve into anything recognizable. And hanging from the mouth area, draped over the lower jaw, is a long strip of flesh. Limp. Useless. It might be a tongue. It might be flayed skin. The painting doesn't clarify. Cultural theorist Julia Kristeva called substances like this the abject, the materials we expel from our bodies to maintain psychological boundaries. Blood, waste, rot. The things we cast off to preserve our sense of being clean, coherent, separate from the world of dead matter. Rapp places the abject front and center, rendered with the same meticulous detail as the safety pin and the cage bars. The strip of flesh hanging from the mouth carries a possible interpretation. If it's a tongue, it could represent aphasia, the loss of language, the inability to speak or communicate suffering. The research packet suggests this as a symbolic reading, though Rapp himself never confirmed it. Either way, the tongue is limp. It doesn't reach toward the viewer. It doesn't cry out. It simply hangs, a useless appendage on a structure that has ceased to function. The eye sockets are empty, dark, hollow voids, and yet the painting feels like it's staring at you. Humans are hardwired to seek eye contact. It's how we recognize other people, how we establish empathy, how we determine whether someone is a threat or an ally. When you look at a face, your gaze goes immediately to the eyes, searching for the person inside. But there are no eyes here, just openings, just absence. Your empathy circuits fire anyway. They search for someone to connect with, someone to feel sorry for, someone to recognize as human. And they find nothing. The transaction can't be completed. You're looking at an object that suggests a former person, but the person is gone. This is what makes the painting so deeply uncomfortable. If the eyes were present, even damaged, even clouded, you'd feel pity. You'd see suffering. You'd recognize a subject. Without them, you see only matter, a thing, a biological structure in the process of failing, and because the rest of the skull is rendered with such precision, every crack, every discoloration, every strand of remaining tissue, the absence becomes more pronounced. Rapp didn't abstain from detail. He chose to remove the one element that would allow you emotional refuge. In the lower right corner of the composition, barely visible beneath the cage, there's a spiral staircase. It descends. The steps are fragmented, broken, dropping away into darkness without landing on any platform or foundation. This is the only architectural element in the painting that suggests movement or journey, but it's a one-way path. The stairs go down, the steps are collapsing. There is no way back up. In the context of Rapp's work, an artist who described his paintings as explorations of Bogomil's universe, an inner parallel dimension, architectural elements often carried psychological weight. The research packet suggests this staircase might represent descent into the unconscious, into cognitive collapse, into the dissolution of self. But it's a speculative reading, not documented intent. What's observable is this: the staircase offers no return. The steps are breaking apart. Once you begin the descent, you cannot climb back. The architecture itself is failing. There is no foundation to land on, just continued falling. The detail suggests that the decay we're witnessing isn't an event, but a process with stages, each one taking you further from the person you were, with no mechanism for reversal. The phrase mind over matter is a promise. It suggests that willpower can overcome physical limits, that consciousness can triumph over the body's weaknesses, and that the self is more than meat. Rapp documents the opposite. This painting is a portrait of the moment when matter wins. When the brain, the organ that generates the illusion of you, begins to fail, the mind goes with it. The self doesn't transcend, it rots. The title is a philosophical pun, inverting a motivational phrase into an existential horror. Every visual detail supports that inversion. The safety pin represents the inadequate mechanism trying to hold identity together. The cage demonstrates the prison of matter that doesn't release the mind, just decays alongside it. The organic mass shows the reduction of the person to meat. The empty eyes mark the absence of the subject. The broken stairs trace the one-way journey into dissolution. This is what Otto Rapp painted in 1973, shortly after emigrating from Austria to Canada, during his Scare Thy Neighbors period, a phase of aggressive, morbid imagery created in isolation. A 1976 review by J. Brooks Joyner in the Albertan compared the work to Edgar Allan Poe's The Conqueror Worm, recognizing it as covertly symbolic, an intellectual puzzle about the human condition, not just gross-out art. The painting circulated for decades in galleries. Then, the internet found it. Stripped of its title, removed from its context, it became a cursed image on forums and Reddit threads, shared as a shock, a test of tolerance, a meme. Without the title, the philosophical argument dissolved into pure revulsion. What you're looking at isn't random gore. It's a designed thesis, a visual argument that the self is temporary, fragile, held together by mechanisms that will fail. The safety pin will come loose. The cage will finish rusting. And the only mercy is that by the time it happens, the mind won't be coherent enough to understand what it's lost.